Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Friday, December 27th. I hope everybody had a great Christmas. We sure did. It was pretty amazing. The second fifth generation member was born just a couple of weeks ago. Very cool. Having 5 generations under one roof. If you are a Patreon member, tonight at 8 Eastern, we're going to do our live where we just sit and chat about whatever comes to mind. Always a fun time. We'll see you there. The next couple of episodes are going to be some summaries of preliminary hearings of cases we've been covering. The first is going to be the preliminary in the Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly murders, the 2 moms that were killed during a child custody exchange, later found stabbed to death and buried in a freezer. The second preliminary hearing we're going to recap is the Matthew Rastelli case. This is the case where the grandma had Googled Donna Adelson several times. I'm hoping to have those out this weekend. And then next week, we're going to do a backstory on the Rose Petal murder that's right here in Greenville, South Carolina. Christina Parcell was found stabbed to death and rose petals scattered around her body. Zachary David Hughes is the one accused of her murder. He is a Juilliard-trained pianist, kind of new to the area. It is a crazy case, lots of twists and turns. I'm still working through all the paperwork I have on the case, and I'll be attending that trial next month here, trying to find out if any of the YouTube channels are going to be live streaming this trial. It did get a lot of national attention when it happened. I'll keep you guys posted. We're going to recap Luigi Mangione's for the charges in New York State. But just moving back to the federal arraignment that happened last Thursday, December 19th, after he waived his extradition and was taken back to New York. His attorney told the judge she was confused. She thought Luigi would be arraigned for the 11 state charges from New York. Instead, he was taken into custody by the FBI and arraigned on those federal charges first. She also pointed out the 2 different theories on the case between the federal charges and the state charges. The feds are charging Luigi with stalking and murder, including him crossing state lines with the intent to kill United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And that's a different theory than the state, where they are charging Luigi with first-degree murder and second-degree murder as an act of terrorism. And his attorney asked, is this a joint investigation? Is this 2 separate investigations? And essentially, she was wondering which defense she needs to be using and then wondered which trial would come first, the state or the federal. That question was answered at his arraignment for the state charges, with the district attorney saying that the state case would go to trial first. Kind of interesting because typically a federal case would take precedent over state charges, but not in this case. He was in court again on December 23rd for his arraignment on those state charges, including murder as an act of terrorism. He pleaded not guilty, and if convicted on the state charges, a potential sentence could be life without parole. For the federal charges, the death penalty is an option. At the hearing for the state charges, the prosecutor said the feds are allowing them to try their case first. And since they have primary jurisdiction, the prosecutor thinks Luigi should be held in a state facility and not a federal facility. But the judge signed a writ saying that Luigi would be returned to federal custody. The judge said he's been through this before and he would rather the feds and the state agree rather than coming back for any other proceedings about the matter. If you guys remember, he's currently being held at the same federal facility as Diddy. If he were to go into state custody, I think it might be Rikers Island, but I'm not 100% sure. Luigi's attorney also said they request immediate expedited discovery in the case, saying that the people have had this case for almost 3 weeks. And that's more than enough time to gather as much information as they can give to the defense, especially now that the defense has 2 different proceedings they have to answer to, with one of those being death eligible, meaning the federal charges. She's also very concerned about Luigi's right to a fair trial. She said that he's being prejudiced by statements being made by government officials, and he's entitled to a presumption of innocence. But the way this has been handled so far, she feels his rights are being violated. There's a wealth of case law guaranteeing his right to a fair trial, but none of the safeguards have been put in place. It's been the opposite. And the charges between the state of New York and the federal charges have conflicting theories in their indictment, because the state charges include to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, to where the federal charges focus on crimes against an individual. She said this is very confusing, highly unusual, and in 30 years of practicing law, she's never seen anything like what's happening with Luigi's case. She also raised concerns about New York City Mayor Eric Adams' comments to the media that make her concerned about his right to a fair trial. She told the judge, "This is a young man. He's being treated like a human ping pong ball between two warring jurisdictions here. And you have the state and federal prosecutors coordinating with each other at the expense of Luigi." She accused both the state and federal authorities of political fodder and a spectacle with how Luigi was transferred from Pennsylvania to New York, being surrounded by armed guards, officials, and all of that in view of the media. So just for reference, this kind of a presence is typically reserved for somebody like a mafia kingpin or a terrorist. And the concern with this kind of a presence in those situations would be somebody might try to take the suspect out. She said this is the biggest staged perp walk she's seen in her entire career, and it was unnecessary because Luigi's been cooperative at all accounts with law enforcement. He had been in custody for over a week. He waived extradition, and there was no reason for the NYPD to have the huge assault rifles that she had no idea were even in their arsenal. And with the press there, it was perfectly choreographed. Then she asked, what was the mayor of New York City doing at the press conference? It makes it utterly political, and case law said these staged perp walks to the media, unrelated to a legitimate law enforcement objective, is unconstitutional, and that there was zero law enforcement objective to do that sort of a perp walk with Luigi. She gets personal here and says the mayor should know more than anyone of the presumption of innocence in his dealings with his own issues. She said the perp walk was his way of distracting from those issues by making a spectacle of Luigi. What is she referring to? Mayor Adams is facing charges related to bribery and fraud after a federal corruption investigation. She wanted to put on the record that statements made publicly by Mayor Adams and him not saying alleged when referring to Luigi could impact his right to a fair trial. She quoted statements Mayor Adams said to the media, which is, "I want to send a strong message with the police commissioner that we're leading from the front. I want to look him in the eye and state, you carried out this terrorist act in my city, the city of New York, that I love and wanted to show symbolism." Now, his attorney said Luigi is not a symbol. He's afforded the right to a fair trial and is innocent until proven guilty. And the mayor was talking to potential jurors and to the very people that elected him. And he's calling Luigi a terrorist. She told the judge she wanted to make a record of this, and they'll fight the charges on both the state and federal levels. The judge said he has very little control of what happens outside the courtroom and can guarantee that every defendant that comes through the courtroom doors will have a fair trial. He then tells the state they should expedite discovery. The prosecutor said discovery is a lot, to say the least, and he's never seen a higher volume of quality evidence than what's against Luigi. He talks about them having the evidence portal, but said it would be smarter if counsel could provide them with a 2 terabyte external drive rather than potentially crashing the portal, uploading all of this discovery. Also, with redactions and the volume of the discovery, they'll do their best. He said this is not a usual case in terms of thousands of hours of video tracking, and said the state is not only responsible for discovery in New York City, but also where the arrest was made, and there were several officers involved in that. They're in touch with those people, and he thinks a 30-day adjournment to see where they're at is good. He also said he doesn't know how repeating what the mayor said advances the ball, but the state will comply with their ethical obligations to try the case only in the courtroom. Now, Mayor Adams did respond to Luigi's attorney's comments and said the cold-blooded assassination of Brian Thompson, a father of two, and the terror it infused on the streets of New York City for days has since been sickeningly glorified, shining a spotlight on the darkest corners of the internet. Mayor Adams' priority is and always has been public safety, and he has repeatedly spoken about how social media is fueling the radicalization of our youth. Critics can say all they want, but showing up to support our law enforcement and sending the message to New Yorkers that violence has no place in our city is who Mayor Eric Adams is to his core. And that is the latest for Luigi Mangione. I'm not sure of the next court date there in New York, but once I find out, I'll let you guys know. Moving on to some dates and other cases that we're following. For Donna Adelson, there is a case management hearing set for February 11th. April 30th, a lot of deadlines in her case. There is a discovery deadline, witness list deadline, demonstrative exhibit deadline. The exhibit list and the pretrial motion filings should all be done by April 30th. Pretrial hearing is May 16th, then June 3rd, jury selection and trial. Moving over to Pike County for the Pike County massacre, sentencing for Jake and Angela Wagner will be on January 3rd at 10 a.m. Still no word about Billy Wagner's trial at this point that I know of, but over 8 years since these murders happened. Talk about the long road to justice. And also, I think now that Jake and Angela are being sentenced before Billy's trial, I don't think we see them testify unless they just want to. We will see. That's it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.